Hi, I'm Bybreen and welcome back to another episode of Soul Stirring Astrology. And as usual, the planets throw up their energies for us to deal with. And this week we've got a textured mixed bag. So firstly, in terms of the planets and aspects of ease, we've got the Sun sextile Mars. So Sun's in Sagittarius, Mars is in Libra. So it's a great time for you to feel really confident in terms of who you are, your core identity, and being able to step out very confidently. It's a great time to close deals, so deal making time. If you're in the middle of negotiations, you're able to move it naturally towards a conclusion where both of you win or all parties win. Also, if you're working with groups of people, you're able to hear the different points of view, pull them together and then go out and represent them. So it's a great time for leadership, but also in terms of taking on other people's points of view, because you've got Mars here. And Mars is in Libra, i.e. in its detriment. So Libra here is softening the Martian energy to go out and lead and control in a way whereby everybody else's views are shut out. Whereas the sextile brings the energies very nicely together. Also, we've got Mercury trining Uranus over in Aries. So we've got fire again, Mercury in Sagittarius, we've got Uranus in Aries. This is a great combination because Mercury rules the conscious mind and Uranus rules the higher mind. So it's a great time for you to be ventilating your mind and your ideas and refreshing them and just being open to a whole range of different perspectives that might take you by surprise, but actually they might be leading you more in the direction in which you want to go in. So for example, yesterday I felt the benefit of this Mercury and Uranus because I was at a networking event and chatting to a whole range of people, just doing what you do at networking events. And I was speaking to this woman and my book came up, and so, you know, she was flicking through the book and she just turned to me and she said, "This would be perfect for my industry." And I was quite taken aback because that was a sudden piece of information. But it was a wonderful way of showing how Uranus works in reality, because it's an industry that she's in. I would never consider that industry, or had never considered that industry until she mentioned it. And as soon as she mentioned it and was able to, you know, just put the case together as to why she felt my book would be of such benefit to that industry, it was that light bulb moment, something sudden that had come about, and that's a great way of showing Mercury and Uranus working in that very harmonious way. To the point now I'm certainly going to give it consideration and to see whether I can pivot and repurpose my book for that industry, which is great. So it's a time whereby, you know, take on the views, but if it works for you, if it makes sense for you, then obviously run with it. Also, it's a case whereby you might want to study something new. You might take on a new language or just pursue an area of interest. Would be a great time for you to be doing that as well. So we've got these energies going on here, which are very favourable, and they're being underpinned now by this energy. So Mars is very pivotal this week. So we've got Mars, and Mars here is squaring Pluto. So where you have Mars-Pluto, you're either going to be experiencing transformation or you're going to experience power struggles and confrontation. So we have Mars in Libra, it's in its weaker sign, so therefore Pluto here has more energy. So you need to be really careful about your motivation for doing what you want to do. And so just check to see that your ego isn't driving you and leading you in a way that's going to be bringing you into power struggles and conflicts with other people. Also, where you have Mars and Pluto, it's about metaphoric deaths. So it could be a death of an idea, an ideal, an attitude, a way of being. It's time for that to go. And if you resist it, that's when you get into these power struggles. It's also about, you know, Mars wanting to assert the ego and Pluto wanting to control that. And so as much as we see this played out in terms of our personal worlds, it's always there in the world. And so here in the UK, for example, we've got this power struggle that's taking place between David Cameron and the Conservatives and Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. And so Jeremy, rightfully so, is taking this very anti-war stance about, you know, airstrikes, involving Britain in airstrikes against IS, and then, yesterday, David Cameron won the vote to lead Britain into war. So we've got this intense power struggle, both men wanting and asserting different points of view. So who's ultimately going to win? And that will pan out in time as to, you know, who wins in terms of justice. So Mars again is making this opposition to Uranus, and so where you've got Mars-Uranus, you've got to be careful in terms of you could be coming into conflict, but the conflict is about your inner frustrations being brought out into the public arena. So where Uranus shows up here, Uranus acts in a provocative way because, and the reason why you may feel the provocation is because you haven't handled your business. It could be that you haven't closed or finished unfinished business, or you haven't taken care of something that's been long outstanding, and so something suddenly will happen. It could be a person or it could be a situation that's going to force you into action. You might resist it, but the more you resist is the more this frustration may build up, and then the way it could show itself is through some type of violent explosion, verbally or physically. Let's hope neither of those actually take place. So you need to be conscious about how you're showing up and how you're behaving. Also with this aspect, there's this great restlessness. You might be seeking freedom from responsibilities, and actually you might feel boxed in some way, hence why you may experience some frustration. Also, some people might experience you as being very difficult to get on with because your ego is driving you forward and you're ignoring everything else around you. So as much as we've got this top tier of being confident in yourself, articulating, ventilating your views, but actually here we're now bringing into the internal conflicts that may take place and the external conflicts and how you need to be going about in the world and handling your business. Now, those two sets of aspects are also being underpinned further because Saturn now has firmly moved into Sagittarius and will be there for the next at least 2.5 years. But it's the heralding of a new era, it's the dawning of a new age, and the reason for this is because Saturn was conjunct the Sun on November the 30th, and the last time the Saturn conjuncted the Sun in Sagittarius was 30 years ago, when Saturn entered Sagittarius. So it takes about 2.5 years to go around the whole zodiac, and so what we can do is maybe begin to pick up some themes and energies that were around 30 years ago that may have some resonance for where we are now, but where we may be in 2 to 3 years' time. So 30 years ago, some wonderful things happened in the world. So Saturn, we understand him as usually being the disciplinarian, the one who's boundaried and bordered and separates people and forcing us to be responsible. But actually, when Saturn went through Sagittarius 30 years ago, the Berlin Wall came down, which is a fantastic thing because it unified Germany. And so the boundaries within Germany became expanded. And that's reflected because Saturn in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter touches everything, it expands. And so therefore, instead of Saturn acting as the divider, it then acted as the dissolver. Another example is in 1987, there was the legalisation of the European single market and the European Union. And so in terms of Europe, you know, many countries were included in this, borders were widened, and so therefore more views, perspective, cultures and countries were beginning to be harmonised in one form or another. And then since then we've seen, you know, other Eastern countries, Eastern European countries being brought into the European Union. Then in 1987, the then General Secretary for the Soviet Union was Mikhail Gorbachev, and he brought in two phenomenal initiatives, and one of them was perestroika, which is about restructuring, and the other one was glasnost, which was about transparency. And so what we saw then was that it was the beginning of the dismantling of the Soviet Union, and so therefore we saw then the rise of Eastern European countries in terms of culture and identity. So here again, Saturn acted as the dissolver. And so what we're seeing then is this sense of, instead of being very constricted, Saturn going through Sagittarius is a very liberating time because of this Jupiter connection. It's about, going for ideals and philosophies that benefit as many people as possible. It's about dealing with justice and standing up for what is right. And so fast forward now, yes, here we are in 2015, faced with a whole range of conflicts going on in the world. But don't be surprised if in 2.5, 3 years' time, we're beginning to see the softening of entrenched perspectives, the widening of very narrow ideas, because where we've got Saturn and we've got Sagittarius, it's forcing us, it's guiding us, it's leading us towards this great sense of stand for something or you're going to fall for anything. And in the standing for something, it's about fighting for your ideals that, as a result of it, is a very humanitarian approach that everybody can benefit from. And the reason why I'm indicating this is what may happen is because we've got Saturn currently squaring Neptune. It's been happening for quite some time, but actually it's going to be around with us for at least the next year to 18 months in terms of the square. But where we have Neptune in play, Neptune's about the collective, what happens to the rest of us. Everybody has the right to be here. We are one people. We are humanity. And so there's a square. So it's a direct challenge to this very solid way of being, this very structured way that Saturn can show up. And going through the Jupiterian Sagittarius cycle, we're going to see the softening of perspectives, realities that enables everybody to be seen in the world. So that's all for this week. Lots to take on board personally, as well as just observing what's happening out in the world. And the quote I want to leave you with is from Susie Cassan. And what she said is this, is that hope is always on the horizon and the truth rises in time. And so what truth will we begin to see and observe in 2, 3, 4 years' time? What is it that we're manifesting? We have hope, there's a horizon, very Jupiterian. We're moving towards better ideals, harmonization, that everybody is able to breathe that collective sigh of relief. So on that note, I shall leave you for this week. So if you like the episode, feel free to leave your comments and like the episode. If you found it useful, share it with your network. If you've got a takeaway from this week's episode, I'd love to hear it. And any other comments that you may have, put them in the comment box below. And I will see you again next week. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.